What's up guys? In today's episode, I'm going to be showing you how to replace a door without replacing the door jamb. Now the main challenge you're gonna find when doing repairs like this is figuring out where the hinges are supposed to go. You are replacing the door, but you're not replacing the door jamb, so you have to match the old hinges onto the new door. Exactly, otherwise the door is not gonna fit. Normally, on jobs like this, what you do is you take the old door out, you lace next to the new door, and you simply mark where the hinges are supposed to go. Easy. But guess what? Today, I don't have the old door. So, I'm going to be showing you two methods that I use in order to trace where the hinges go onto the new door and how to mortise them. So, let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so the first thing you need to do is you need to get the rough measurements from your door jamb, top and bottom and side to side. Once you have those numbers, write them down because you are going to need them later. Next, you need to measure your door, but before we do that, I want to point something out. The tape measure, the bracket at the end, it's not fixed. You can see that movement, that's about 1/16 of an inch off. So anytime that you measure anything, make sure you are consistent. Either have the bracket extended or recessed, and make sure that every time you measure that your measurement is consistent. Measure your door, top and bottom, and side to side. Now that you have the two measurements, the rough opening and the measurement of your door, my rough opening was 80.5 inches tall by 30 inches wide, and my door is 80.25 inches tall and 30 inches wide. So, how much are we going to need to cut? Well, the gap underneath your door between the floor and your door, well, it depends. If you have a solid surface like tile, vinyl, laminate, I like to leave about 1/2 inch gap. If you have carpet, you want about 3/4 of an inch to about an inch. So, now how about the sides? Well, the sides, what I like personally to start with, it's about a 1/16 of an inch reveal or gap in between the door jamb and your door on each side. So if you add the sides, 1/16 of an inch on one side and the other, total we're gonna need to trim is going to be 1/8 of an inch. That's a good number to start, because if you need bigger, guess what? You can trim more. But if you trim more than you need, well, it's a lot harder to make it smaller. Now here what I'm doing is the flooring that I have is tile, I think, and so I need 1/2 inch on the bottom. So my door is 80.25 inches tall, so all I gotta do is just trim off 1/4 inch on the bottom. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just measuring the left side, the right side, the middle, and just double, triple checking. Another thing that I like to do is I like to tape the area that I'm gonna be cutting. That prevents splitting, so that way you get a clean cut and you don't have to sand anything off once you're finished. Once you're ready to cut, the next thing, what I like to do personally is I like to use a square like this one. This is a 4-foot long square, and I like to trace a line exactly where I'm going to be cutting. But not only I use the square to mark the line, I also use it as a guide to guide my saw. The saw that I'm using is a Milwaukee, and the blade that I use is an ultra finish 60 tooth blade, so that way it makes a clean cut. But like I said, I use the square and I rest the saw right next to it, and it helps me make a straight cut. Another way you can make this cut is using a track saw, or you can use a table saw. But if you're only doing a door or two, I mean, this is the fastest way I found to make a cut on your door. On the bottom of your door, there's going to be a filler piece, just like this one. It depends on the door. Some doors is going to be about 3/4 of an inch. Some doors is going to be an inch. Now, if you do happen to cut too much on your door, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a hole in the bottom. So save that filler piece, and then you can just stuff it back in there, glue it in place, so that way you can cover the hole, just in case. Now remember, we gotta trim the sides. Here I'm using a planer. Now this planer has all kinds of different adjustments that I will never use in my life anyways. Only two adjustments I always use is gonna be 1/16 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch. Sometimes I use 1/32, but rarely. Anyways, this is what I use to trim the sides of the doors. Like I said earlier, you can use a table saw, you can use a track saw, but this is what I use personally. It works for me, and you can make very small adjustments on the sides, especially if your door jamb is not even. So right here I'm taking off 1/16 of an inch, and I'm making 2 passes just to be safe, because it's always best to take less than to take more. So there's 1 pass right there, and then I'm making another pass. So total, I'm taking 1/8 of an inch. Normally, I like to trim the hinge side, because I'm gonna have to be mortising the hinges anyway on that side. So you really don't need to take off, 1/16 of an inch on each side. You can just go on one side like I did here, and you'll be all right. Now here I'm verifying my cut. It should be 1/8 of an inch less than it used to. It was 30 inches wide, and now it is 29 and 7/8 roughly. Once you cut your door, take it back inside and put a wedge on the bottom to the size that you decided to have the gap. For mine was 1/2 inch off the floor, so the wedge that I have on the bottom is 1/2 inch thick. Now here's the important part out of the entire video. If you forget everything that I said, well, remember this. There are 2 ways you can actually measure where your hinges are going to go. The first one is by lining up your door like I did here, and then marking it. Just like that. I mean, just line up your door to the hinge on the door jamb, and then just mark. Make a mark on the top, and make a mark on the bottom. This will give you the exact location where you need to mortise the hinge itself. There's no missing it. Exactly where you need to cut, this is it. So that's the first method that you can use to mark the hinge location. And if you're only doing a few doors, I mean, this is the best way. Now there's a faster way you can actually go about it, and that is you can use a tape measure. Measure from the top of your door jamb to the top of your hinge. And the measurement that I got was 7.5. It is 7.5. I know it looks like off, but what I was trying to do is I was trying to make up for the reveal between the top of your door and the door frame. That's one thing that I forgot to mention. When using this method, you gotta account for the reveal on the top, the gap between your door and the door jamb. Normally, what I like to do is I like to have a 1/16 of an inch gap reveal on the top. So what you can do is you can do a little bit of math and measure to the top of your hinge. For mine, I got 7.5 inches. And then what you can do is you can subtract 1/16 of an inch to that number that you got. And the final number that I got that I need to actually place my hinge is going to be 7 inches and 3/8. Now this method works great if you have a lot of doors to do, because you can just go around the house and measure everything and then just have everything outside ready for you to cut. But if you're just doing a door, two doors, or if this is your first time or you don't have any experience, well, I recommend doing the first method because it's just a lot easier. Now here I'm just showing you that my measurement lines up with the first method that I got. So, and here I'm just mortising the hinges. Um, the jig that I got, it's a Ryobi. I've been using that jig for a while. I'll be honest with you guys, it's not the best. Um, it works. I'm still trying to find something that works a little better because I still have to dress up my cuts because it's just not 100%. But if you're only doing one door, a few doors, you know, I mean, it works great. But if you're doing a lot of doors at once, my recommendation is just to try to find something better. But like I said, this one works for me. I'm still on the lookout for a better one. And then the way this jig works is it just, you can fix it to the door, line it up to the lines that you marked earlier, and then what you do is you use a router to trace to mortise the hinge, so that way it's recessed into the door. Once you have everything set and ready to go, well, the next thing you're gonna need is a router, like the one that you see in the video right now. Now the bit that you need is a mortising bit. The one that I'm using is a Bosch. Link in the description. And all I'm doing right now is just measuring how far I'm gonna need to be cutting into the door. You can do it manually like this, but the jig itself also has like a depth gauge on the side where you can just set your router and it will do it for you. But once you have that done, all you gotta do is just trace the router inside the jig and it will just do all the work for you. Very easy to do actually. The router that I'm using is a Makita. It's a small one. It doesn't take up much space, but you know, it does everything that I needed to do, and for the jobs that I do, this works great for me. You can use any router. You can also mortise the hinge by hand using chisels and stuff. I find this way to be the fastest for me. Now, like I said earlier, the jig is not 100%. It will do about 95% of the work, but I still have to dress up the cut and make it look nice because it's just not the greatest jig ever. But anyways. Alright, so once you have your hinge mortised, this is a self-center drill bit, and it's mainly used for drilling holes for your hinges. It centers the drill bit right in the middle of the hole, so that way you know it's gonna go exactly where you want it to go or where it needs to go. You don't really need it. I mean, if you're only doing a door or two doors in your house, I mean, you can just go ahead and freehand it. But I do a lot of doors and it just makes life a lot easier. The problem is if you don't center your hole for your hinge and you try to screw your hinge in place and your hole's not centered, a lot of the times it's going to move on you and it just, it will throw off your measurement, especially once you start fitting the door to the door jamb. So by having it centered, it makes life a lot easier. And as you can see here, I only mortised one hinge. The reason for this is because, well, we just want to fit the door right now, and we want to hang it and see if it fits. We don't need to mortise the other ones because, for one, trying to trace all three hinges at the same time, a lot of the times, you know, your measurements are going to be a little bit off, and it's just a lot easier just to do one. Then take the door inside, you know, screw it to the door jamb, and then just fit it. Make sure everything works 100%. And then what you can do is you can go ahead and trace the other hinges. Right here, I hung the door up, and then I'm fitting it. And here's the first issue that I had. The door is not closing. So, and I've noticed at this time that the hinges uh, were bent. So I guess the previous door they had in there was adjusted at one point. So you know, in order to adjust the door, you have to bend the hinges. So you can see the gap in there is actually a lot bigger than 1/16 of an inch, like it was supposed to be. So I was trying here to adjust the hinges so I didn't have to take the door back out and then, you know, cut a little bit more off and then have to remortise the hinge and all that good stuff. So I was just trying to, you know, adjust the hinge so I didn't have to do that, because it was just a little bit that was actually rubbing on the door jamb. But unfortunately, yeah, it didn't matter what I did. It just didn't work out. So I had to take the door outside. I had to cut off actually another eighth of an inch, and I had to remortise the hinge because, well, I literally just shaved it off by, you know, trimming another eighth of an inch. And now this time the door is actually clearing the door jamb. But pay close attention. I didn't fully close it. And this is going to be very important towards the end, because not fully closing the door right now cost me probably another 15 minutes of labor towards the end, and you'll see why. But anyways, so here's the next step. And this is where you are actually almost done. Now that you know that the door is closing, almost actually for me, you know where everything's gonna go. Finally, what you actually do now is you trace the other two hinges. So line the hinge to the door and then just mark it. Get your pencil, mark top and bottom, and now you know exactly where you need to mortise the door. And that's what I did here. And that's how I do all my doors. It literally works every single time, and I have never had an issue. I guess you could mark the hinges at the beginning, but what usually happens is if you're off, you know, trimming your door or anything else, you know, by marking all three at once, then, you know, you make a mistake. It's just gonna amplify, because now you're gonna have to fix all three hinges. By doing it this way, you know 100% that those two other hinges will line up, no issues at all. So lining up, trace the hinges, and then take your door back outside and go ahead and now you can finally mortise the other ones. Now remember I told you earlier I didn't fully close the door, and that was a mistake. Well, here I'm putting the door on and everything is supposed to be almost done, and when I go to close the door fully, I noticed that the top was actually rubbing on some caulking that I guess somebody put it on the trim. And I would have noticed that earlier if I had closed the door fully, but I did not. So yeah, so this little mistake here cost me another 15 minutes. because here I wasn't sure why it was closing, but it was rubbing on the top, and then I noticed it was caulking up there, like a lot of it. It wasn't just a little bit. So I had to take the door outside. I had to trim off a 1/16 of an inch off the top, and then that way it will clear the caulking. But anyways, yeah, you know, you're gonna make little mistakes like that, and I wasn't paying attention, and then it was just a lot easier just to trim the door than to scrape off the caulking on the top, because that would have stripped the paint, and then you know, I would have had to paint it, and it was just it would have been a lot more work. So anyway, so here I'm just finally putting the door back on, and now it closes. So yes, no issues now. About 15 minutes later. So the last thing left to do is just to put the hardware on, you know, and then you're done. So replacing a door, guys, is not really that complicated, but it is a little more difficult, in my opinion, to replace a new door onto an existing door jamb. It would have been a lot easier and a lot faster if it was a pre-hung door, and even if I had to install the trim on the inside and outside again, it would have been a lot faster. So, but you know what? Sometimes that's not a choice, and then you just gotta do what you gotta do. So, yeah.
Oh, in the morning for at least an hour.
Yeah.
But I've been so busy here getting this place together and doing the shit I have to do that, you know, just to get things the way they should be. Do you do this for your liability?
No,
so you can
I have a YouTube channel.
You do?
Of course. Alright guys, so that's done. That job took me about 3 hours. Normally I can get it done in about an hour and a half to 2 hours, but I had a few setbacks. So the first one was, you guys saw the hinges were bent. Normally I bring in new hinges, but this time, this lady, she literally called me, and she needed it done as soon as possible because she's having pictures taken tomorrow to get the house sold. And then realtor told her that she needed to install a door there where previously she didn't have one, and she just couldn't wait until next week. And I only have one appointment today, so you know, I'm like, whatever, you know, I'll come over and get it done. So it's hard for me to say no to money. I charged $250 for that. That's exactly what I charge to install an interior pre-hung door or replace a door, because it takes me just as long for either one, and that is not including painting. If I was to paint that door, I would have charged an extra $150. The second setback that I had was the top of the door. So I guess at one point they had something there that was glue to the door jamb, so there was a lot of caulking sticking out in big chunks. So instead of scraping that off and then probably you know, damaging the paint, I just decided to trim the top of the door a little more. So I had to trim that down another 1/16 of an inch. But that's it. Hopefully this was helpful to you. Like I said in the past, nobody taught me anything. I didn't work for anybody. I taught myself how to do exactly what you saw in the video. Is it 100% a masterpiece? No, it's not, guys. But you know what? It works. And in my honest opinion, the only difference between me and an expert is an expert probably could have gotten it done a little faster. That's it. Anyways, as always, if you like the video, don't forget to like it. Comment below if you have any questions, and I will see you next time.